now. The moment that I've waited for now is what I was created for now. I'm gonna let you know what I'm feeling now. I must be quite emphatical. I'm feeling plain ecstatical. I might just float right up to the ceiling. The joy inside me, the smile you see, it's for one reason alone. The time and place where I want to be is holy hot damn, right where I am now. The past is too historical now. The future needs an oracle now. Is when you feel euphorical. Trust me, your crowning achievement, your greatest prize will come on the day that you realize the moment you're living for. Wow, is
Hi, everybody out there. Well, I think it's a wonderful time to interview a person I've wanted to talk to for a very, very, very long time. His name is Colin Andrews, and this is a man who has been studying crop circles for his whole life. I saw many crop circles when I was in the UK and in Scotland, and that's about it. So I've got some questions about why those locations are as they are. But he is best known for his research, better than anybody else, because he provides the continuity between the past crop circle research and the present. And his view of this phenomenon and the human-made phenomenon gives us a kind of an interesting insight into the subject. He has stated since the late 80s that the phenomenon indicates a future period of human chaos. So I'm kind of interested in that. And he is very conscious of the native elders who agree with Colin's assessment that these crop circles support the 2012 Mayan prophecy, which says the complete idiot's guide to 2012. Anyway, I'm so glad to have you, Colin. I've been an admirer and all that for many, many years. And by the way, I'm completely transfixed whenever I look at the sacred geometry of a crop circle. So welcome to my show. And this is my friend Bill with me.
Oh, thank you very much, Shirley. And hi to Bill also.
Okay, let's just start off. Let's start off with, what about the new crop circle reports? Because one of the things Bill wanted to know is how come we don't see them in America? Or do we, and we don't know?
Well, the latter is the case. I don't think the numbers are quite what they were a few years back now in the United States. Indeed, the numbers globally have been reducing gradually since around the mid-2000, 2006 period, somewhere around there. I don't have the database up in front of me, but yes, they appear here in the U.S., as they do in many other countries. Today, for example, in Germany and a new one in England, just in the last few hours, have been discovered. So, you know, the geographic distribution is unquestionably global, including China and countries we don't hear too much about. But, you know, the overall scene has changed considerably, whilst the patterns have continued to evolve and are still very captivating, very appealing, at a spiritual level in particular to a lot of people, native peoples too. The whole spread, really, of the sciences and beyond are very much tweaked by this. it just really won't let them go. And as you know, it hasn't let me go as an electrical engineer who coined the term crop circles.
I didn't know that. Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Well,
it's kind of
Colin, does it depend on the energy of the geographic location of the country?
I think there are two things happening. There's probably a lot more than that. But I think that there is a certain quality that one feels emotionally, which is the human body registering an unusual, palatable energy field in those locations. We look at them, and what we see from a scientific perspective is that these locations have very profound and long history, archaeological history, places like Stonehenge, Avebury, Silbury Hill, these and the native people's burial grounds in this country too. And so there's very often a spiritual sense and feeling to them. It hasn't been measured. We still are not there. But to understand that where they are located, I think, is part of the formula.
Well, do you think that the human consciousness in the area where they appear affects them?
Yes, I do. I think it affects the natural surroundings. And I think, and this is a very difficult one to sell, I'm not trying actually to sell anything, but I mean, a lot of people look to me because I've been, in the subject for so long to kind of support the fact that everything is real, everything is non-human. And, I can't do that because, my findings have revealed that is not true. That what is true is that whether one is researching them, and I'll put myself in that category as a researcher, or whether one, and this is where it gets very, we need to slow it down at this point, because when we look at those people, and there are many out there who are making some of them, making many of them, there is a common denominator, Shirley, which a lot of people are overlooking. One, in the disappointment of that, and secondly, in what it feels like a non-purity, but it actually is quite the reverse in my view. And that is that these people and myself, people researching them, the lay public who are just looking at them, the farmers who are discovering them, all of us are having and have had from the very beginning very unusual interactive phenomena taking place around us and to us, including the people that are making them. And that, I think, is probably one of the, if not the most important thing that has been missed or chosen to be missed by many of us. And I think it's a fatal mistake, because the conclusion really here, and I'll stop and kind of allow this conversation to go on, is that this would seem to me to be a deliberate, interactive engagement of humankind, of mankind, which includes the insertion of what appears to be into the human mind, into the human brain, the suggestion that I will do something, or the suggestion that I will make, the suggestion that I will go to a certain place. That could be termed more strongly as an instruction to do so. But I have now overwhelming evidence. Not only has this happened to me personally, but to people making them and researching them, that there is a conversation going on here. And the only way we can really nail this is to be totally honest with ourselves from wherever we come from in our looking at this particular unique and strange phenomena.
But Colin, that begs the question that I've been interested in for some time now. Are you saying that through the geometric sacred value of these crop circles, there is a potential mind, how should I say, gentle suggestion going on? I mean, are they messing with our minds positively?
Yes, I do think so. I've no evidence that to the contrary that it is negative. I can give you examples, Shirley, and again, as in all cases, one can all, obviously reject what I'm saying, but I would be lying for that to happen. I can give you several examples. And, you know, I tend to give my personal examples, not because I want to make it about me, but that it doesn't leave in my mind, you know, work to do, in other words, to resolve whether somebody's being honest. I do not consider myself delusional. You know, I'm an engineer with, you know, many years behind me, and my job was to resolve problems. And this is a problem. And so when I was, and gets to one very specific, something very important happened in the year 2000, and this was in my second year of receiving funding from Lawrence Rockefeller in New York. He was interested in the UFO in particular, and I'm sure that you know all about the work that he was involved in. And I was a small part of that. You know, I was looking at the crop circles and feeding reports to him. Well, we had reached the position of about 2 years of research looking at very specifically trying to eliminate those people that were making some of them, to get rid of it and to leave us with a real hard, solid field in which to research. Well, we weren't completed, but we were very close to it when something happened. I was at my daughter's home near Stonehenge in England, just falling asleep, basically. I'd been a busy day in the fields once again, and a voice came out of just nowhere. This is in the room, within inches, it sounded like, of my head. And it said, this is not the first time this has happened, it's just one example, you must go with this information now. And there was the emphasis now. The strange thing not only was the fact that the voice gave me an instruction or a suggestion, I don't know exactly which, but in the inflection of the words and the way it was expressed allowed me somehow, which I can't explain to you, what it was referring to. And I knew immediately. I sat up in bed. I basically was dumbfounded at what had just happened. And that morning, I knew exactly what it meant, was that the information we had gained, that at that time 20% of every crop circle investigated in England, and only England, in the years 1999 and 2000, we could not substantiate with private detectives, former police officers, etc., who were being funded through Rockefeller, me coordinating it, that we could not resolve. In other words, that 80% approximately were made, and we have the evidence, were made by people. And my instruction from an unknown source was to start the debate, start the discussion, because it's important that we do. And then something else happened. First thing in the morning, that night, that same night, I had a phone call from BBC Radio in London, who had traced my movements to my daughter's house somehow or other, and they spoke to me, and the researcher said, last night, I had the strong feeling that you might have something on the crop circles for us. Do you? I said, well, that is kind of bizarre because, yes, I do. And the next, within 24 hours, that whole thing was out there, and that caused such turmoil and difficulty for me personally for years. You know, I was accused of all kinds of things, of being CIA, a disinformer. But here we are now, Shirley, having traversed, I don't know how many, 15 years since that happened. We have a better overview, we have a clearer picture, and I have no question at all that we are being interacted with by another intelligence prompted by geometries, geometric design, by placement, by testing our integrity between the individual groups who have, of course, separate views as to what might be going on. So, sorry that was a long-winded answer. But
wonderful. With a really wonderful, fabulous, Colin. Loved your payoff. I'm just, how many groups are participating from otherworldly civilizations with these communications, do you think?
Again, it would be a guess. I think the fact that there seems to be continuity and has been, we referred to it in the first book in 1989, that it felt as if there was a parrot on our shoulders. You know, there were only 4 of us then. scientists and engineers that were looking at this, the public weren't aware. But we were getting already interaction in so much as we would make comments to one another about one particular feature or another, only to have it changed, altered, interacted with, and we became suspicious of one another at one point. But I think the fact that there is continuity, there's a gradual lesson here. Whether we're going to get it in time, I don't want to sound too negative on that, I really don't know. But my guess is that at least one. But as far as ET is concerned, if we look at the UFO ET subject separately, although we're unable to really do that, as a separate study, I think, of course, there are many. And some are here, some are looking like humans, others are not, and others may even be being monitoring us through insects and other life force systems.
Colin, what did you mean by in time?
I'm sorry. How did I use it, Shirley?
You were talking about whether or not we would understand it in time.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Thank you for that. Yes, because first of all, I have to confess one thing is that outside of this research, I'm extremely involved and feeling as an engineer the problems and difficulties of our planet and climate change. I'm very involved in that, and I'm becoming more emotionally engaged, and I'm feeling more concerned and more stressed, I guess is the truthful way of putting it, by what I'm seeing. And so when I look and I ask myself constantly, what is really the question that is being posed? What is the information we're being given here? I'm led on a number of fronts to see that we have extremely limited time, accelerating now, and in other words, accelerating in the effect of global warming and in climate change and in human behavior, in the religious and political extremism that is going on, in our population explosion, the reduction now dramatically of the resources we need, including water, as you know, in California. This is not going to go away. This is Mother Earth in difficulty. And so I am I find it hard to come to this place, but we are very positively, I believe, on a crossroads. And so when I say time, I'm hoping that we've given ourselves time to at least present our children with some sense of hope for the future, because that we have to do. We have, a lot of stuff here is down to us, down to humanity. I've been saying of late just to friends, who are interested in all of this, that I feel at some level, I don't mean this boastfully, by the way, it sounds like it, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek a little bit, but I've been saying, I feel that I've resolved the UFO problem. I feel as if I have resolved, in my mind, the crop circle mystery. I have not a clue in resolving humanity. It is it is a little tongue-in-cheek, but, it's bizarre that here we are on this beautiful little, molecule, planet Earth, with all of this extremism and all the doubts and questions about our future, and we send a small device the size of a piano to the outer skirts of the solar system, to Pluto that we've been hearing a lot about. Incredible technology, amazing application of our mind and our abilities, and yet right back here, as people like Edgar Mitchell and other astronauts tell us, on their trip back to this little blue molecule, this profound sense that we are made of the same stuff, and we're unable to resolve. We're unable to get on the same page if we have not got as a goal to have peace, integrity, and love for our peoples. Then what in the world have we got?
Yeah. Well, I have to beg the question now. What do you think, Colin?
I think it is. It is a search of our inner selves. It's a mirror. That's the best way I can put this. Cynthia and I, my wife and I, spent a lot of time in trying to formulate how I could best put it in the last book, which I know you have a copy there, On the Edge of Reality. And this is now 2 years old. And what I think is that through the interaction, through everything that's playing out, in and outside of the subject, we are experiencing our inner and outer reality, and the question is being posed to each and every single one of us by placing a mirror and reflecting it back on us. If this isn't a time for stopping spinning our wheels, recreating, rerunning old ground. We cannot find new ground with old minds. Now is the time to look in that mirror, and where forgiveness is required, forgive. And, another way, I guess, of just looking at the one extreme end of this, is that if the extremists in our ranks, beat, kill, whatever, their last enemy, what is left and what then? It surely we must find a commonality of cause here. We really, truly have. It's an enormous problem with little time to resolve it. I get personally a feeling that we're going to be forced into a rabbit hole here where maybe at the moment, by choice, we can resolve and course correct. But I have a sense with some of Mother Nature's own hands coming, she's already preparing to save herself. I mean, this is what we're looking at, I think. These are self-support systems that we have caused stress to, and they're in self-correct the best they're able to. Some of those will be played to us in ways that we must realize that we're all in it together.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it is. That, I think, is what it is, Shirley. It's a mirror to reflect upon the past. I'll end stop just here, is on my website recently, before I had a really rather sudden and serious health issue back in March, I had just started voluntarily what I call quiet time. This came from spending a campfire with some native elders here and, with other scientists and engineers, and meditating, just opening up, that's all, freewheeling our minds. And what came to each of us on that night, I guess on that alignment, perhaps, was now is the time for the talking to end. Now is the time for quiet time, to listen and go within, and to find that place for the future understanding. And that really, it's on the website. It's a few words that go with that, which I don't have it right on my tongue right at the moment. But that, I think, is it.
So, do you think each of us will experience this in a different way? In other words, are we really being challenged to experience ourselves and what we haven't resolved?
That's a beautiful way of putting that question. Yes, and the short answer is yes. And I think, connected with that, I would go maybe one step further. It's sourced in that beautifully put point, a question stroke, basically a conclusion. And that is this, is that in my view, and you say if you agree or disagree with me, because I just feel strongly that most people don't actually fully embrace and believe the unusual, the world around them, unless they have experienced it themselves. And so where we come from, and this was incidentally another one of those voice phenomena, of voice interactive situations some years back, where I was basically, I'll just say it, I was told to share something that happened with me, which I had never spoken about publicly, when I was 5 years old. It happened twice. and to share this at the next presentation I was doing, which was down in Washington, D.C. And I did so. And what came out of that was that not only was I became suddenly emotionally unlocked, and I didn't anticipate my own reaction. I started crying, with the microphone in my hand, and I did not expect that. And as I was pouring out something that I started shaking as all of this was kind of being put out into the public domain, the very next presentation I did, I believe in Arizona, where each bar one presenter did exactly the same thing. In other words, these were personal experiences that each of us have had, and I no doubt that you've had them, and many other people too, that for some while we feel would affect our careers, our credibility, and I worked very hard on that coming, as I think you know, I was advising Prime Minister's cabinet, Margaret Thatcher's for a while on this subject, and Queen Elizabeth and other people, and I was fighting hard to maintain credibility and with a scientific bend at least, without all of the talk of UFOs, abduction, ET experiences. But the bottom line is that I had them, and so had these other people. So when we share them, we change everything around us. To get back closer to home, Shirley, as we know, when the media played back on your friend, Dennis Kucinich, who had the UFO experience, rather than allow the man the courage which he had already shown in referring to that incident, through you and others, what they attempted to do in an unprepared media was to take him out on what was a very brave move, and one that each of us is being asked to do. We are being asked to be honest, to expand our horizons, to allow this to manifest.
Uh-oh. Well, you've just hit a nerve with me, and I can't go into why. But, oh boy. Timing is everything, right, Colin?
Isn't it, Shirley?
Now, Bill, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Colin, Bill here.
Hello, Bill.
A while back, you mentioned that 80% of crop circles are made by people. Did you mean by that 20% are extraterrestrial, UFOs, 80% are falsified, made by people that aren't true crop circles? What was that statement? I thought that was a powerful statement.
Well, thank you, and it should be expanded upon too, for clarity. A lot of people don't understand what was behind that conclusion, that statement. It was made on BBC television initially. 80% of all of the circles that were researched, investigated by that team, and I was coordinating it, during 1999 and the year 2000, were made by people. But here I need to put in a rider, and you've drawn me to this, and I'm, thank you for it, is that of that 80%, a portion, we're unable to determine the figure because the extent of the work necessary to be done to find it, there was a number in that 80% which were placed there following this interactive process of human beings. In other words, I'll give you one example. During that period, in that 80%, there were two teams that set out to a field in remote England, Midlands of England, between Scotland and and centre of England, to a field which had not received crop circles before, each with a design that had connection and association with the geometries and alignments, and unbeknown to one another, placed them in a field adjacent to one another the same night. Now, that if you were to simply take a brief conversation note from each of them, they would say, well, we had this design, Bill or Joe or whatever thought of it, and we thought, well, there's an area that hasn't been covered, we'll do this, we'll do that, and then they arrive and they do it. Similar background, with the intuition, the connection with something unknown, tells the second team. to do the same. And what I have seen over the years, and I've not connected it to this statement, is what I call bibs and braces. That's an English term, meaning if we don't do it this way, we'll do it that way, but do it, we will. And on the timeline for this phenomenon and human evolution, something is intended to happen. And whether it is by placing people in a position to make them directly, or in the 20%, that other 20%, is for a mysterious, unknown force to create similar or indeed some identical designs. So there's the whole story is wrapped up in that statement. But what we're still left with, we can't change human nature. We can't change the way we're wired. And we're wired into an old system, which I do believe now, around 2012, was decoupling, and it is still significantly decoupling. And we're now evolving over the threshold into a new paradigm, into a new world, where this will make perfect sense, because psychic connection, psychic communication will be not unusual. I hope I kind of answered it. If I didn't, Bill, come back.
No, that's very good. And the other thing that I've noticed when I see crop circles, I'm noticing the phenomenology of the crop circle, the geometric design. Is that what we're supposed to notice, that there is something outside of our comprehension that is placing designs on the earth? Or is this a symbol that's a message that we're supposed to decipher the message from ancient designs of similar geometry?
Yeah, well, we have looked, the royal we, meaning a lot of people, certainly I've been involved in it, we have looked at the designs, their meaning as far as we've been able to decipher. We've looked at nature and the mathematics of nature to try and get a handle on some of it, and we believe we have got a handle on some of it. One particular geometry I'd like to make a little more of in a moment if I can. So, yes, I guess the answer is we are supposed to, in fact, we've been hand-fed a couple of geometries that do mean something. We see it in its application in the UFO itself. I'll be more, a little bit more clear on that. And what was the second part of your question? I'm sorry about this. It is so hot up here tonight that I have a job to keep my brain in gear.
Is there a specific message in these geometric designs, or is it that we're just supposed to think outside of the box and the phenomenology takes us out of our usual day-to-day story?
Well, that's put very well. Any and all. It has to be any and all. Whatever is happening, that's why I feel the approach to this must be the embracement of everything. All that is happening around the crop circle phenomena, around the crop circle scene, including those that are making them, because there is an important part to that, we must embrace it all. And so if a geometry in the basket, food basket of our planet, if wheat, barley, and oats, poses those questions, then that is what is intended to be. I don't think there's almost anything that's happening here that is not intended to be. Remembering that, very important though, is that everything is temporary. Everything. And so, we must bear in mind it will not be posed forever. There is a timeline here, and so the messages we need to understand, I think, and to offer quickly, I'm trying not to hold too much of the talk inside of this, is that the message was conveyed on a television system in southern England in 1976. That was recorded, again, there's a longer story, I won't go into that, but what came out of those television sets to about 2 million people that night during a news broadcast, when the picture was faded out, and the voice, a very unusual voice which I heard, it was in my television area, was very, very powerful. It has been repeated in the deciphering of several of these crop designs. It all relates to our planet. It all relates to basically common sense. But that seems to me that we need it spelled out, and however it's going to do it is how it's going to do it. Here's one geometry, just trying to fully answer your question. The equilateral triangle, the placement of the energy positions of that equilateral triangle, if you have the base of it to the vertical and move up that vertical line 1/3 of the way, which coincides with the exact placement of Stonehenge in southern England related to the towns, the ancient towns, of Winchester, Warminster, and Wantage. These are very ancient towns with very old history of 41.5 miles apart on each of those legs. We were given this information. I'm going to have to leave the detail for the book because not to plug the book. It is simply to say there's too much to cover right now on it. I'm obviously, I think, hogging too much of the space. But that geometry was given very directly in the middle of the night to myself and to my wife. She had received the information related to the human body and the chakra points, the exact same geometry. At the same time, we were both woken. A light came into the room. I could not move. Initially, I was just totally paralyzed. I knew something was going on. I didn't know what it was. I was given this download of information to give it another, just to give it a term. And I was shown the placement of the crop circles throughout the years on this equilateral triangle, the placement of Stonehenge with regard to it, and it's an important placement on the matrix of planet Earth. And then as this information left me, it was just like losing a friend. I felt it was like turning a light down with a dimmer. The connection, which was so powerful, I wanted to write everything down immediately, but I couldn't move until it left me. And as it left, I was able to move. I looked across at my wife, Cynthia. She was glaring up at the ceiling, and I knew something was happening to her. And some short while later, she looked at me and said, "What just happened?" And I said, "Tell me, what just happened to you?" And she said, "I've been given this triangle." And the healing, actually the hairs are all standing on my arms as I'm telling you now, the healing of the human body related to these placements. And I said, my God, I've just been given exactly the same thing with regard to the planet and the crop circles. And I am not alone. I'm not alone. There are people I probably didn't want to mention without their clearance, people that you and I know out there. One senior military officer responsible for the nuclear warheads and the launching of them in this country received with his wife something almost identical. During the night, they too had the light enter their room. And so this is not a Colin Andrews, of course, story. This is a humanity coming to the end of one cycle and preparing as long as it can get its act together this time round for the future.
Colin, big question. Do you think that these communications are equally given to male and female?
What a great question. I'm thinking as quickly as I can. I would say, Shirley, I would need to tick a few names off, but I think I would say it's a little more female than it is male, but I would need to do just a little more work on that. I don't have the answer to that off the top.
If it's not in exact coordination with the recognition for years now of the depletion of respect for the female, and the female is now coming back almost revolutionarily. It may not be as positive as it would be if you just resonated to the yin. But anyway, I'm feeling that the world itself, half the problem is that the other half isn't equal.
That is the problem. I quite agree. Every day this comes into my thinking. How can I personally attempt to inform and encourage, the changes that need to be made, and yet there are others who say to me, it's not our job. It's not our job to engage with anything at this level. This is too beyond humans. It is to, at this stage, maybe that was a stage when back some years ago, 30, 40 years ago, we could have changed the outcome of a lot of this. But the ship steering into harbor starts 14 miles out, and it's a wee bit late in the day, I think. And so, the native peoples in particular, Shirley, say that, and I won't speak for all of them, but certainly some that I'm in touch with regularly, basically feel that we speak different languages, many of them, on our planet. We don't understand even one another. The Dakota, for example, I have a friend, a very good guy with tremendous wisdom, with of the Dakota people, and jokes and ghost horse. I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning his name. It's quite well known. He's spoken at the UN on similar subject matter. They have, as most other native peoples, have their own language. There are words in English that don't exist in their language, and if we don't understand one another, these are groups speaking different languages. And now not with the help of the digital age where our children are pressing zeros and ones, we can't even rely upon body language. That nature provided us in our communication is on a face-to-face, one-to-one. And we can't and are not even now doing that. So we do have tremendous problems in trying to redirect those you're just referring to, the other half.
Yeah, but Colin, do you think that, and this is a big question, do you think this separation of understanding of languages was purposeful on the part of extraterrestrial intelligence?
Well, certainly let me just say to my father-in-law, who is now passed, he was a PhD, and he strongly felt that was very deliberate, and the more he discussed that, the more I took that view too, that we have here different races, we have different cultures, we have different religions, and all of this being a mix, which basically speaks to we're not going to get too much continuity and too much power. We're not going to challenge as a one those that are more powerful. There is a containment formula in that application and resource around our planet. So my view turned out ultimately to be the same as his, is this is no mistake. We came here as probably genetic material for the long journey with at least one and maybe many other species. And we have been given enough to feel that we're whole in the sense that we're real and alive, but not very much more.
Yeah, well, maybe we are actually almost the theatrical experiment of whether all those otherworldly civilizations can come together themselves. And
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great thinking, Shirley.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, because when you look at what's happening, Colin, give me your evaluation of what ISIS is doing. And has there been a crop circle that's been seen that maybe has some message for us humans relating to this horror?
Wow, this is a big one. Now, again, hands up, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I get involved in a lot of stuff because of the breadth of the families of designs that lead us there, whether it is science or politics and religion, etc. So this is not one that I'm unfamiliar with. I have a file on this and associated kind of extremism. But here's what I have to confess. I have of late, hence why I felt quiet time was necessary, felt that every mystery is not mine to resolve. Now, I know that sounds like, who in the world do you think you are anyway? But I think from me personally being my own boss as to where I'm going to delve and where I'm not, in the short term, I see here such a level of extremism and anti-humanity that I feel not to engage it. So that it could be, of course it is a failing as far as a researcher is concerned. I should be looking at all things equally. But there is something in this ISIS domain that has shown itself to be scary beyond belief. I mean,
exactly.
The destruction, Shirley, of the most wonderful archaeological sites.
Unbelievable.
That our fathers and mothers before us were part of. The creation of all of our religions and all of our thinking that was there for us all to learn by, and the sense of coming from somewhere, to be destroyed and to clean the slate clear at that level, I will only say at this point, without giving myself a problem, I don't understand it.
Yeah, but what's your speculation?
Well, first of all, I'm not aware of designs that speak very specifically to that. And I've a sense that if it appeared, it is probably would be seen as being so provocative to those who would be engaged with it in its researching and the landowners, it probably would be removed. Now, I'm just speaking of that off the top of my head. I'm not avoiding your question, but I'm just basically saying that my feeling will be just simply that, based upon very little, because there's not much in the file on this. I think that you're looking at what I will call the tip of the arrow. And I've spoken of this as situation for just over 30 years, is that as we evolve, those of us, let's give ourselves a little kudos here, those of us who know who we're trying to be, let alone who we believe we are, know that we're doing this for the light, for love, and for help and support and respect. These are positive attributes, and this is where we come from. And for all of our progress that we're trying to gain in knowledge, in improving our lot for one another, we inch towards and get closer to the opposite force. And as we climb this arrowhead, the good and the light on the right, and the negative and all that is bad that goes with this, equal and opposite, is inching along with us. And as we close in now, it further confirms for me that this is the crossroads. This is the time. We've got to see a way through this, or the doors will close, the conduit will close. Because at the point of the arrow is everything that is evil versus everything that's fighting for survival of the life force of all that is.
Okay, Colin,
that is.
so you're telling me that you do believe in the polarity of good and evil.
Yes,
my question is, maybe evil is just a total misunderstanding because we are not to the level of all there is.
No, we're not. But that's I think the goal. That's where if we're to look at evolution in the direction that we're heading, that the direction that we, or at least are being given the opportunity, the threshold to a much better. I mean, everything available to us now is bigger and better and more wonderful. And knowing what love is, knowing what respect gives us, knowing that we can only create what we can think of, so in our minds, we have constructed the place that is the wonderful place that we are trying to reach. And with that, we are being challenged with an equal and opposite force. I think, sure, I certainly wouldn't fall out over it because I really don't know anything. My view is that, I guess this comes from the electrical engineer really, is where you always have to have this potential reaction. There has to be potentiality for anything to move. If it stagnates, it's one force, and it isn't going anywhere. It will be what it is. And so for potential work, we have to have both. And I think this is where I have viewed what some people will call the biggest pain in the backside in creation. And these are these type B skeptics, which you've had plenty of, and certainly in your earlier career when you came straight out with what you felt the bigger world was all about. To your credit, you took a lot of flack, and I have in my own small way too. But it's coming from the equal and opposite. And these are the skeptics that, one, I would never employ. As an ex-employer, I would never employ somebody who I defined as a type B skeptic. But that said, they are challenging us to create, better information. They challenge us to come up with the goods. And because of that challenging, counter force that they represent.
No, I understand that. And I look at the skeptics as teachers for me to hone my own spiritually fulfilled point of view. But look, I haven't seen one crop circle in all these extraordinarily sacred geometry pieces I've looked at. I haven't seen one that seems to depict what I feel could be called evil.
Right. That's another very good point, and which I guess you see is what I'm basically saying is that as far as ISIS is concerned, I neither have seen any patterns that would speak to this level of evil. I haven't seen them either. I think it is it's where the intelligence end of this is the central point, I think. If we continue, as we have actually largely across this last 30 years, or since 1983 when I got involved myself, the question almost inevitably has been, what is real versus what is hoax? That was in my formula too, right the way through to 1999. And in reassessing again, and then reevaluating the findings in 2000, was that it's not the way, in my view, to approach it. The most significant findings could only have come from and have, but still not been acknowledged and basically, taken on board for what they are. It's profound that the interaction of which I've only given a couple of examples. There are many, and you see them in the book there, Shirley. They are mind-blowing. Now, and I'm saying if, I know this to be true, but others have to satisfy themselves. The media, who are years behind with producing anything about anything, I don't know how they would be capable of communicating. In fact, frankly, they are not. The only way I think we will get this across is in your business of the movies from Hollywood. I think it stands a chance because there's too much here in the documentary sense. There's always a peg, there's always a hook, as you know. Are we going to end this documentary with a hoax, with the New Agers? It's all hook, it's all financed and up the front, and they don't change course on the way through because it's not investigative. A movie needs to, I do think, they need to do the CIA or NSA that have been involved in some of the movies in the past to produce, the engineering of our society. I'm personally against that in general because the landscape, what we're supposed to feel comfortable with and not, I'm for seeing through all of that to be transparent. I am all for your Edward Snowdens. That's where I come from. These are the people who speak the truth. Those that are doing the deviousness and telling the lies and breaking the laws are supposed somehow or other to be the good. So, that's where I come from, and I would like to see this. Personally, I have to say, I know this sounds like a real pitch, but, I do think it's there, Shirley. There is too much here to be missed, because, like I say, there is not forever to be looking at this. All pretensions must be dropped. Fear of being judged and ostracized can really, truly no longer control our actions. It is the sincerity that must prevail. We cannot access inner truth and connection to the greater whole without the sincerity. Equally, if we don't act on what we receive, in our day-to-day, the conduit will close. The adventure is awaiting, and what is profound here is that our children are watching.
Okay, I think what is profound, Colin, is the truth that Shakespeare voiced. He is the great master as far as I'm concerned. Everything is about theater. We're all living show business. And we're strutting our stuff on the stage, and we're just actors thinking it's real. Okay, everything you talk about in relation to proof and lack of proof has to do with whether we characters will be humiliated or not, believed or not, celebrated or not. That's all theatrical bullshit. So why can't we just be, okay, let's say we're all engaged with theater and write the script we want to write from the point of view of the cosmic understanding of reality.
Yeah.
By the way, what is this, Colin? What is the German BND files? What are they, and why is it important that they've released?
Well, I was only talking to one of the UFO researchers involved in that last week. I haven't been given any information as to what they contain. I was very close, and still am, to the British situation, where when they, supposedly released their secret documents and made it clear that everything was coming. I continue to be in touch with some people there, and stated publicly what a lot of BS this is, because it's very clear to me that some of the most powerful, extraordinary experiences that have taken place, events that have happened in British territory, are going to be removed and never seen by the public, or certainly not in this particular release. I was told, and in fact they went on in public domain, saying that this was not true, that they were releasing them. Only last week did they reveal there's more to come. So as far as Germany is concerned, I don't know what they have there, whether this is the back engineering of a UFO, which has been long rumored to have taken place, and the German scientists we're working with.
Sure. Everybody's thinking that. I mean, when will that come out? Don't you think that's time? What is the reason there is such, what is the word? The insistence that all this stay hidden. Why?
That is the question we keep asking. The only one for me that makes any level of sense, I'm not saying I agree with it, but any level of sense from a government perspective, is that somebody, and I'm going to stab and make a guess here, I've been in touch over the years with all frontline people on this, and my stab at this would be that the back engineering of materials discovered inside a craft, probably several, at Roswell and since, have allowed government advantage, military advantage, to be gained in electronics and in conductors and a number of other fronts that leading U.S. corporations are now involved, that the lead time they've been given, applied to military alone, has been so significant that they are loath to go there at all. So I believe that that's probably what is still going on.
I don't know if this is what you're saying, but my take on it is, if this UFO phenomenon is real, if beings are coming from all over the cosmos, traversing many, many billions of light years, etc., to get here, what is their energy source? And if that energy source could be shared with human beings on Earth, we would not have war, because that eliminates oil and gas. What do you think?
That's right. I stamp of approval goes on that one completely. I mean, yes, absolutely. It does make. And
isn't this what Eisenhower was talking about when he said, "Beware the military-industrial complex"? For God's sake.
Absolutely. And also his Russian counterpart said exactly the same thing. He went on to say, I'm grasping for his name right this second, I should know it off the top of my head, broke the USSR apart. Oh, boy, is his name not coming.
Gorbachev?
Gorbachev, what a wonderful man, what a wonderful being. He, too, said in his first book that it was the day that I realized there was nothing I could do that would prevent the next war. That these are programmed, these are operations that are all part of the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower spoke of. That was Gorbachev in his first book. So anybody that gets close to these doors where there are people without name badges, numbers only on the door, all of whom we pay the wages, these are the guys, the real guys, that are running this show, that with the black budgets and the rest of it, who could put an awful lot right that is wrong in our world today.
Would you, by any chance, what would you name them? Global elite, Illuminati, cartel of the world? How would you name that group?
I think they're the supreme mafia. I think they are there's a supreme mafia. It's a closed network, super powerful people. The first who had their hands on the industrial hardware, the first to get their hands on computers, and now, of course, are so far out in their control of the cell structuring that they created that even within, they're unable to break it. When you're cell structured to that level and have only a right to know, presidents don't stand a chance. They don't know half that's going on.
Sure.
And it's a fait accompli.
Yeah. Kind of makes you wonder, though, Colin. Let's look at Roswell, 1947, for God's sake. When that thing got crashed, whether purposefully or not, and it was re-engineered, it was back-engineered, that was the birth of the computer. So you kind of ask, well, were some of those extraterrestrials on board giving us this on purpose?
Well, I think if they weren't then, they have been since. There's a lot of information coming through directly to certain individuals, and there's a lot further to go with all of this. But I think the connectivity between the crop circles and the UFO is an important one for the very reasons we're now talking about. That this is a matter of securing at some level of confidence our intellect, our awareness, but there's another level of measure in this, Shirley, and it is the electrochemical balancing machine that we are related to all aspects of our emotions. Yeah. So at whatever emotion we demonstrate in our communications, we produce electrochemically in our bodies.
Yeah.
Any and every, as you know, across the entire light spectrum is emotional electrochemical reaction. And so that measure is there for outside, off-planet, to know precisely how we're thinking. An angry person is detected by its electrochemical energy field, and we've got instruments that will show that. I mean, there's a temperature, for instance, even. And the other,
And we haven't really experimented with the imagination as to how we can mathematically and scientifically prove that this love instinct is possible to create for all.
That's another great point. You are such a thinker. Well, this was a discussion we were having with the Lakota elder last week. You know, in the Lakota language, love is best defined as no beginning and no end. Well, that's not the way we would in English.
Well, we just sort of we've romanticized it. I mean, am I right that the Asian languages don't even have a word for love?
That's right. That's right.
So what are we doing with this to sell popular novels and movies? I mean, come on. So we've got to get a beat on what that is.
Yeah, there's all of that. But I think if you look at the pure science, the quantum physics, that can support all the subjects that you and I talk about, all that we are looking at, you know, do I have time to read a small paragraph or no?
Sure, please. Thank you.
It's a short one from the book, and I'm only doing this, reading it from the book because, you know, preciseness is kind of important. But the context of new science. Science often provides context for changing paradigms. Quantum mechanics is the field of physics that resulted from the observations of light and the extraordinary interactions among subatomic particles. What was witnessed forever changed physics. Wave-particle duality resulting from Young's double-slit experiments with light explains that all particles have the properties of both wave and particle, which we now know. Although there are alternate interpretations, the standard interpretation of quantum mechanics considers this duality a fundamental property of the universe. Young's experiments resulted in theories regarding the role of the observer in determining whether a quanta shows itself in a given moment in its particle state or in its wave state. Apparently, the observer or the fact of being observed is the causal factor. That makes consciousness a determining force of reality, supporting the metaphysical idea that thoughts create reality. A further question arises: what connects the observer to the observed? Is it a flow of energy, a field effect, or something else? There's much more to that. But this really brings us, we have gotten all of the scientific support for the subject matter, for the outside of the thinking of the box. I think it's just simply, it is a matter of embracing it, you know? I really do. We have to
not only embracing it, Colin, but to get back to my point of view, make certain you have a good Hollywood producer who's got the money, and then you'll get it across.
Yeah, and yours is certainly advice that I would be listening to.
Listen, I don't want to take any more of your time. This has been wonderful. I'd love to get together with you to just speak, not in front of other people, about some stuff. So I might call you. Is that all right?
Oh, absolutely. Anytime, Shirley. I'd be honored.
I'd be honored to. Thank you, Colin. You're the brilliant one.
It's my pleasure, Shirley. Thank you. And thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Colin.
My pleasure.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
In the Health and Wellness Center tonight, go within yourself and see if you can make a crop circle that makes you swoon with pleasure.